Jawel, bijzonder goede avond allemaal. Bonsoir tout le monde. And I'll switch directly to English because if I look into the camera, I never know where the cameras are, but the world is watching. And that's always so impressive when the world is watching. We're here in front of 100 people, 150 people, dedicated fans of Warren Ellis. I guess so. I'm pretty sure. But then the world is watching, as we have to share the world as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to do this in English since the talk is in English, and I'm extremely proud to welcome a guy that I've been started working with mid-90s when he was playing violin in the Dirty Tree. An amazing band. He didn't write the song lyrics for it, but when he talked in between songs, they were almost like 10 pages he was telling, like improvisation and stuff like that. That impressed me a lot. Then later, of course, he became the sidekick of Nick Cave, and he wrote a book. That's why we're here. Nina Simone's gone. Please welcome, give him a warm applause, Warren Ellis.
Warm welcome. Thank you very much.
Warren, welcome. Do you remember that you played here already on this stage or in this venue?
No.
Okay, this is proof. You played her in 2012 and in 2005 with the Dirty Tree.
Well, I can't argue with that, can I?
It's like science. Science is important nowadays, so...
I guess I did play here, yeah. It's good to be back.
And there's a reason why we put a piano in the back and you have the violin with you, so you might play again tonight. We don't know.
When in doubt, whip it out, is what Iggy Pop said. I heard him say that in Australia. I live by that.
Hey Warren, I've seen a lot of people being lazy during COVID time. You just came off this Carnage tour, but you released an album for this film, this Train I Ride.
Yeah. Yes, I did, yeah. I'm not sure if people... I think lazy might be being a bit harsh on people. I think we went through this incredibly traumatic time, and I think everybody got through in the way that they could. And for me, once the sort of initial shock of things happened, I just got so fed up with the rage machine and Donald Trump and who was getting it wrong and who was getting it right. And I got sent a bunch of poems that Marianne Faithfull had read, and she had COVID and she was dying, and I listened to those words and they took flight, and they reminded me of the wonder and awe that we are possible of. And there was such a kind of juxtaposition against what was going on outside the window, so I shut the window and said, all I know what to do is to work. And that's what I did. I sat and wrote a book. This was already made. I recorded this actually on the Metro and the Eurostar. I wanted to see if I could make a score.
That was going to be my next question. So I'll basically take a train to London or to Paris, and I see Warren Ellis sitting in the train playing his violin, recording this album.
Yeah.
Isn't that an amazing ride?
It would have been probably not a violin. It was more like synthesizers and things. But yeah, I kind of recorded it on there. I like to work anywhere that I can these days. I don't have office hours. I'm either awake and working or asleep and worrying about work. It's like 24/7.
A very special album you made was this one, Marianne Faithfull.
Yeah, yes.
It's like basically like poems from the romantic area of Lord Byron and John Keats, and you recorded it with her, but halfway she...
Well, actually, she read them, got sick, went into a coma, and then they sent me the poems.
Wait, rewind. She went into a coma.
Well, she was in a coma. She'd recorded them in her bedroom because she's quite challenged physically these days. And she caught COVID, went into a coma, and I got sent the poems with a sort of phone call from Francois saying, we don't think she's going to make it. This is probably the end. This is the last recordings. And I didn't even like romantic poetry, I have to say. As a kid growing up in Australia, I just didn't get it. And Marianne can read a sort of phone book and make it sound fascinating. And hearing the text take flight was like a kind of balm for me. It was the first step, actually, of making sense of the world that seemed to be just in absolute chaos and confusion. And this listening to this recitation over and over, I mean, like I listened to it and just threw music at it and atmospheres and things like that, was my first step of kind of some sort of, like they were meditative. And I absolutely fell in love with the text, and I already loved Marianne, you know. And then she came through, and then she hated the record too. She called me like a week after I thought it was like a fucking masterpiece, you know. And I sent it to Nick. He's like, "What have you been doing?" And I'm like, "Well, I've done this record with Marianne. She's in a coma." He's like, "I want to hear it," you know. So I send it to him, and he listened to it on his phone, like in real time. And then just at the end, he went silent, and he just said, "This is unbelievable. Can I play on it?" And I said, "Of course you can." So I sent it to him, and he worked on it in the studio. I sent it to Marianne, and I get this call, and it's like, "Oh, please, God, don't tell me this is it, Warren." And I was like, "Well, I guess it might not be, if you know, like if you don't like it." And I said to her, and she was, I think, like a week or two out of the coma, and I said, "Look, Marianne," actually, I said, "Marianne, how much have you listened to?" And she said, 2 tracks, and I hate it. And I said, "All right, look, do me a favour, open your heart." I was trying to think of what I could say, you know. I was like, I loved the record. I said, "Open your heart, give it another chance. If you don't like it, you have to get somebody else." Because she's like, "I imagine French horns and cello," and I go, "I'm not the dude for that, Marianne. Like, really, like, you need to get somebody else, you know. It's not me." And I've worked with Marianne a lot, you know, and love Marianne to pieces. And I said, "I'm not the guy for that, but give it a listen." And about a week later, she called me and she's like, "Oh, I think I'm starting to like this," like that. And, you know, it was interesting because as I was working on this record with her, I was sitting in this absolute kind of state of anxiety trying to write this fucking book that I had no idea how to write. And somehow the two became intertwined, and I would just sit there with this text going round and round. And
we're talking about this book, eh?
Yeah, this book here. So that they sort of became intertwined. I was working on that and a piece for the Musée d'Orsay for some French artist. I was knocking that out, and Nick was on the phone. I had to finish a score for Blonde, Andrew Dominik's new film, and then we thought we'd go in the studio and try and see what we could do, and then we wrote Carnage in there. It was all happening around the same time, and I was just kind of trying to write this book most of the last year, calling people.
Which the whole book is basically about an event that took place in 1999, Nick Cave's Meltdown, the Curator Festival. That's next year. It's being held again at the Royal Festival Hall, and the curator is Grace Jones, so that's going to be an amazing lineup as well. And it's hard during that time to find, because the internet wasn't that present, neither were the iPhones and stuff like that. It's even hard to find a program, but I found a program of the 10 days that Nick Cave curated.
That's Brian Ferry's signature.
And that's Brian Ferry's signature.
Saw that.
Yes, indeed.
I was going to put that in my book, but I thought it was a bit of a lesser object.
We didn't run through.
I made my own list.
Yeah. To be honest, we didn't run through the questions, so it's a surprise because I didn't recognize Brian Ferry's signature.
Look, I fucking researched the whole thing, man.
Yeah.
I was like on the internet, you know.
And he performed, so...
He did.
Yeah.
I'd never met Brian Ferry before. Stop me if this is boring, but I was literally like, you know, I'm 4 years out of Australia, and, you know, I come from a little country town, and Brian Ferry was just like fucking Brian Ferry, you know. And he was playing at this meltdown thing, and I was sitting in the front row like this, you know, watching, and I could see him side of stage, and he's just going like this, and everybody around him was, you know, like looking around, and he's going like that. And then he came out and played, and it was one of the most extraordinary things I've ever seen, his performance. And afterwards, I went backstage, and he came up to me and he goes, "Where were you?" And I said, "What?" And he goes, "I was looking for you," like this. And I said, "You were looking for me?" And he goes, "Yeah, I wanted you to play with me." And I'm like, how do you know that I play? And he goes, "I know." And I went, "Okay." And I said, I'm Warren Ellis." And he goes, "I'm Brian Ferry."
Brian fucking Ferry, you said.
Brian Ferry. And then I said, I come from Ballarat. And he goes, "Mining town." And I said, "It is a mining town. How do you know?" And he goes, "I'm from a mining town as well." Amazing.
You did a lot of research because you recognized it directly, and there weren't that many photos around from Nina Simone.
I saw all these people kind of rehearse. It was like one of the great 2 weeks, like an education, you know, like for me, you know, the caliber of people that were playing out there. It was, you know, and I was playing on there with Dirty Three and with the Bad Seeds and Nick, and I'd been out, you know, I'd left Australia in '95. I'd just cleaned up when this all happened. I'd sort of kicked a smack and booze and speed and amphetamines and I guess a few other things as well. But I'd kind of kicked all that, and this was kind of like, I guess, this incredible kind of life kind of lesson that I had, watching all these people. Because I was able to go, Nick gave me this ticket, I could watch people rehearse, you know, so I could watch Jimmy Scott rehearse, which was just extraordinary.
That was going to be my next question. I'm a big fan of Little Jimmy Scott.
Who isn't?
Check out his name, Little Jimmy Scott.
Who's not a fan of Little Jimmy Scott?
Who's not a fan?
Who's not?
Oh,
yeah.
It's if you hear his voice.
This is actually, if you've seen my book here.
There's a photo.
There's a beautiful photo here.
Of him.
You see this? So this amazing photo here, of Nick and Nina. This is what started off my search for finding images, because there was nothing at all available, really. Like, no one had an iPhone, like we're saying. And my friend Blethen, I knew he'd taken this photo, and I reached out to him, and it led me to discovering my old violin that he had locked in his basement. It's all in the book, you know. You have to buy it and find out. I'm not gonna like ruin all the good bits for you. But this photo here, which is of Jimmy Scott and Nina Simone. I don't know if you can see the faces. Pass it around and have a look at it. There's
But I got the photos of Blethen Butcher.
Hang on. And Blethen told you, keep your fucking things. There you go. You keep them moving. But Blethen told me when he sent me these photos that the shot of Nick and Nina Simone, Dr. Simone.
This one.
Yes, this one.
I became a pointer, not an interviewer.
Okay, yeah. Well, you can move with my flow, and so he told me. He said, "Look," they said to him, "You've got one shot," and he's like, "I need two. I need like a portrait and I need a panoramic," and they just said, "You've got one shot," and he's like, "But I really need two," and they just said, "You've got one." And they walked into the room, and they said to Nick, you know, like, "Okay, you can come in now." Nick walked in there, and then the guy said to him as he walked past him, "Okay, you can have two." So Blethen walks in like this, and he is so nervous. He picks up his camera and goes click and takes a photo of his shoe, and then the guy looked at him and said, "That's one." And so Blethen told me when he went through the roll, sure enough, there was a photo of his shoe, and then that photo of Nina Simone and Nick. And then Jimmy Scott walked in, and you can see the look on her face changes.
There's no such thing as a coincidence, because the photos that Blethen Butcher, which is like an in-house Bad Seeds photographer in a way, in Cave, and this is a beautiful photo, and this one as well. He kept it in a storage at a certain place in a certain street called
Jubilee Street.
There's no such thing as a coincidence.
No, there's not. And
isn't that amazing?
Well, that's where my violin was, which was unbelievable. Yeah. And I thought my violin had disappeared. Like, I just thought it was firewood. I'd had this violin that I'd had for 20 years. My first violin that my father got me. And my father showed me a magic trick when I was a kid. Hang on. And I didn't realise what it was at the time, but he wrote songs and played guitar, and he'd written a bunch of songs, and he played them around the house. And I asked him how you write a song, and he just goes, "It's easy." And he picked up a book of poetry, and he just started singing along and playing, and it was like a magic trick. And I just thought everybody could do that. And I think that was my introduction to the creative process. I didn't know at the time. I just thought everybody could do that. But he was like a gateway to something that I think if I tried to find another way, I probably still would be knocking on the door.
But something after the gig happened, and that was this kind of thing.
Yes!
And it's been talked about.
They wouldn't let me use that photo that you had, the fucking BBC.
Well, I'm skipping through pretty quickly due to certain copyright reasons. But
you can go really fast if you want.
This is because this is an important thing. I saw the 20,000 Days on Earth fictional, half-fictional documentary, an amazing documentary, and this part is very important.
Do you remember that gig, the Nina Simone gig?
Oh, yeah.
Fuck, that was good, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was up there. Like, I've seen a bunch of gigs that's one that was like one of the greatest things I've ever seen.
Do you remember, before she started playing, she took the chewing gum out of her mouth? Like, sort of stuff. Took the chewing gum out and just stuck it onto the piano.
Yeah.
And it just
I have that chewing gum at home, yeah. I have that in my...
But you got that?
I took it, yeah. I went up and took it off the stage after.
Did you really?
Yeah. I have it in a towel that one she wiped her forehead and then went like that.
Fuck, I'm really jealous.
And I remember because Matt apparently walked past her room and she was sitting in there like looking really pissed off and not wanting to be there. And he goes like, "Is everything okay, Mr. Simone or whatever,
Dr. Simone.
Dr. Simone, I guess." Matt wouldn't have said that. And "Is there anything I can get you?" And she just said, "I'd like some champagne, some cocaine, and some sausages." and Matt goes, "All right, I'll see what I can do."
It's an amazing piece, but I never thought about the fact that this could become a bigger thing in terms of... this is what happened after the show when you saw Nina Simone.
Are you going to tell them the whole book? Is this what we're going to sit here and tell? I mean, the thing about that is, I just wish my shirt looked that awesome in real life as it does on the screen. The thing about that is it's what the book is about. It's about ideas and ideas taking flight and love and care being needed. People need to get under these ideas, and we owe it to ideas to get them out there. And this little thing on this, it probably could have been edited a little bit more, I think, and they could have de-Australianed me a bit in some way. But this little incident was the first time it was released in public, this idea, and people didn't believe it. They thought the rest was all true, and in fact it wasn't. I was just taken to a set and, told, "We're going to talk to you." I didn't know it was coming, but what it was, it was like an idea that was thrown out there, and this is what we do when we create things. You throw ideas out, and you hope people get underneath them, and with love and care, and help them take flight. And that little thing set off the book because it got into the kind of collective consciousness, the collective imagination, and as I took it out to put it in the exhibition, for Nick's exhibition, as I got it into the world, the right people came underneath it. And I don't know how this happens, the right people get under things, but when they do, it's a powerful thing. It's a beautiful thing. It's awesome.
And this is what happened. So you took the stage towel, you put it in a beautiful bag, an ugly Tower Records bag. Some people might recognize the Tower Records chain store, like from back in the 90s. And then you took it a long time in your suitcase. Who's actually that guy with the? It seems like he's having a wig or something.
Barry Gibb.
Oh, it's Barry Gibb from the
That's
DJs.
the awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, Barry. That
no one's going to buy the book after this. Everyone's seen the pictures.
And then this, I think, is you build a shrine around. And let's zoom in. This is very important. This is Beethoven.
Yeah.
And you're a big fan of the Beethoven Seventh Symphony. And this is what happened when you played it one day. Was it during school that you sort of got an out-of-body experience with Beethoven? That's a really beautiful part in the book.
Yeah. I wonder if we're not giving people too much information here about the book. Like, it feels a bit like we are telling them, I wouldn't read this after this, but we can flick through them. I just wonder if, I mean, you know, the book, what I had this problem, right? I had this dilemma. And I had this piece of gum, and it spoke to certain people, but and because of its connection with Nina Simone, and it had a power about it. It was connected to someone touched by the hand of God, and anybody that she'd spoken to, it spoke to them. But what was there was, I mean, who's ever picked up a violin before? Who's ever held a violin? Who hasn't held a violin? You haven't? All right, here. Have you ever held one before? Okay, what does it feel like?
It's very light.
It's light.
Yeah, it's very light.
What else is about it?
Well, it's beautiful. It's tiny,
beautiful,
yeah? Well,
someone's kicked it around a bit, haven't they?
It looks like, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
It's light, and what else? Does it smell like anything, or does it?
No.
Okay. So, just turn around so people can hear you. Okay, yeah, that's it. Turn around. So that violin, I've played basically everything from the Boatman's Call onwards. On every note I've ever played has come out of that violin. Every soundtrack, every live concert I've ever done has come out of there. How does it feel now?
Can I keep it?
Huh?
Can I keep it?
Can you keep it? So that is the problem that I had with this book, and that's not Nina Simone. I'm not, but I had this thing and this thing around it that I couldn't put into words. So I had to kind of look at the narrative of the gum and try and work out, much against my kind of better judgment, why I cared. And it was through other people. Oren Moverman and the Muller Mister was extraordinary. And because Anne gets this stuff, and I texted her pretty much straight away, and she sent back a text that absolutely blew my mind. And I realized writing this book that you need affirmation from people. And we need affirmation. We are ideas. People are ideas. We all are ideas waiting to happen. And whoever comes across our path, like my teacher when I was 17, and he's like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, they've offered me a job as a manager at McDonald's. And he looked at me and said, don't be a fucking idiot. And I'm like, why? And he goes, you have something with music. All my life, people have seen something that I never saw myself. And this affirmation is incredibly important. And we are all ideas, I think, and we need people to show us what they are. Not all of us are fully formed. Some people seem to be fully formed, but I don't think a lot of us are. And we need other people to point us in the direction that we may go. So yeah, I sort of, this incident here we talk about with Beethoven, I started tracking through the things that I just thought were quite natural, you know, visitations from ghosts, and like the concert kicked off this memory for me of atmospheric changes. You know, like how a concert can change your life. That concert changed my life, and anyone who was in that room. There was something not of this world happening. Nina Simone wasn't of this world. She had something else that not many people have. Most of us just swim through the mud of creativity, trying to sort of use a couple of tools to do something. And then there's people like her. There's people like Stravinsky. There's John Coltrane, Ellis Coltrane. There's Beethoven. There's people, whoever. There's Bowie. You know, there's people up there, whoever they are, that you see as gods. There's these people up there. The rest of us are just swimming around in the mud, you know, like trying to find our way through the creative kind of mud or something like that, you know. And I kind of looked at these moments in my life that had changed me forever, and this concert was one of them.
A lot changed when the exhibition was going on, Stranger Than Kindness.
Yeah.
And there was this beautiful text from Nick Cave at a certain moment when he texted you and said, like, you worry me sometimes.
Yeah, well, I guess I do worry some people sometimes.
That's
like,
a good thing. But the beautiful thing about it is, like, when suddenly this gum got exhibited, got into an exhibition, you compare it to the air, the last breath of Edison that got into this test tube. And I've never heard about this story. And it's a beautiful story, actually.
If you read the book, you'll find out about it. I don't want to do many spoiler alerts here for you, but
we're on page 31.
You know, I mean, the thing that blew me away was that I saw the gum was like an idea, that it needed love and care. It needed the right people to get underneath it, and I needed the right people all my life to get underneath me and push me in a direction to realise my better self. And it was through other people, through teachers, not necessarily school teachers, but everybody remembers the person that said, hey, this is really good what you're doing. This sort of confirmation, like you remember the one teacher that said, this idea is great. You remember the person that says to you when you're getting in the lift, you look awesome. You remember that, you know, it changes your day. And so for me, the story became about, I thought it was tracking the kind of making of getting the gum onto the sort of, into the exhibition, you know, and I sort of thought it was about that, but it was Oren who pointed out to me, I had to work out why I did it, why I cared. And for me, it was just obvious. I never asked any questions why I'd even bothered to do this. But I also realised in writing it that, you know, I was told there was a God when I was very little. There was a God. I said prayers. I went to church. And at some point, that all kind of... I transferred that, I guess, belief system into music. And music became a spiritual quest for me. When I heard John Coltrane, I believed, and I still believe, it was the voice of God. Of some God. And we can create our gods. We can create our world, and we project that world. That's how we see the world. I remember an amazing text in... Has anyone read Equus by Paul Schaefer? It's an amazing film with Richard Burton in. It's a story of a kid who blinds these horses in a field one night, and he's in a psychiatric hospital, and they don't know why he's done it. They just think he's a monster. And Burton plays a psychiatrist, but he's sitting there and he says, you know, I go to Greece once a year. I look at pictures of ancient Greek. I think I'm communing with gods, the ancient gods of the old world. But here's this kid riding through a field, naked, his sweat mixing with the sweat of his god. Now you tell me who's insane. And that really stuck with me, that image. And I love the idea that we can create the world that we want within us and create our own gods, create things to look up to push us.
I traveled last August to the Hall of Gratitude where the gum was exhibited on this little piece, and you see it bigger. I sort of got emotional. How can you explain this? It's a stupid piece of gum, and suddenly it became.
Well, it's not it's not a stupid piece of gum. That's the whole thing.
You made it like a sort of an emotional kind of relic.
No, but you know, you can also look at it like I'm asking, what's religion? What's religion? What does it take to believe in something? It takes faith. It takes hope. What does it take? To be creative requires the imagination. The beautiful thing was that the thing that people rallied around under this piece of gum, you couldn't touch, like the last breath of Edison. You know, Henry Ford asked Thomas Edison's son to collect the last breath of his father, and so he put some test tubes out and stopped it, and that's in the Henry Ford Museum now. Now, the idea of that can create, the imagination that unleashes is a powerful thing and a really beautiful thing. And the same with the gum, the idea that Nina Simone had touched it, like any sacred relic, like any holy relic, the power that's in there is in the power of the imagination of the person that stands before it. And it's all about the imagination, and that's a powerful thing. So, you know, Andrew Dominic said to me, like, you know, I gave Andrew a copy of the gum, and Andrew looked at me and goes, "Are you going to mass produce them?" And I said, "No, I'm not." And he goes like, "Good." And then about a week later, he goes, "I've been thinking about it." And I'm like, "What?" And he goes like, "It could be like the new crucifix. Like everyone's going to want it. It could be. It's that powerful," which I just thought was so. I mean, I'm not going to mass produce them, but I just thought that was so beautiful that made that thing click within him to think about it like that. But again, you know, I think it's the thing about what pushed me, you know, to write this book was that it was a process that I see a lot happening, like a concept that I see happening a lot in the studio when I'm in there. Things that I don't understand, powers at work, following instincts, following your gut, things that you don't like kind of understand, but you're moved by something. And I saw this happening with anybody that saw this piece of gum. And for me, it was like the first time I'd seen some physical representation of that. And in the photos, it was happening as I was being sent photos by Hannah Pritchard, the woman who made the first kind of copy of the gum for me.
And these are the copies. You made 20 miles of the gum, 10 in silver, 10 in gold. I've been wondering, and a lot of people do, I think, to whom did you give them?
Well, it's not important to who I gave them. They know who they are. You know, it doesn't really matter. I mean, who I gave them to.
That's okay. That's okay.
I guess if you don't have one, you know you didn't get one.
I think there's one person in the room who has one. There's a Belgian connection.
Yes, beautiful Anne de Mullermister, who I reached out to when I kind of felt this thing that I had, and I sent her this picture of the first impression of the gum, and she wrote back to me, you know, "This is like a hair of Christ," and it just stopped me in my tracks. These words, because I hadn't kind of thought about that, but when I saw it, I knew that's what it was. And it's this thing of empowering you, other people empowering you, and understood what it was about, what it meant, the significance of it. Like, you know, someone like Flea, he gets it. Flea is just absolutely all up for like, I love Flea to pieces because he's connected to this sort of energy, like he just runs with it, you know, and I love people like that because they confirm my suspicions that there is something incredibly awesome about life.
She made a ring, and I wondered when you see the ring like this, the gum, it looks like the continent Africa, Nina Simone.
Yes, there's a lot of things. I used to see like Christ on a cross, or I'd see like the rabbit smashing Umachi. I used to look at it very rarely because I actually thought the magic would disappear. I haven't touched it since. I've never touched it. I haven't seen it, actually. It's now in a safe in Denmark, in a specially controlled environment. And, you know, like, it continues to grow, like, beyond the book. Like, I saw Christina from the Royal Danish Library. Now, she handles Hans Christian Andersen's manuscripts. She's dealing with Nick's exhibition. She deals with a lot of stuff that's kind of, you know, serious stuff. I saw her after the concert at Royal Albert Hall when we did this tour recently, the Carnage tour. I don't know if any of you saw that, but we managed to do this tour around Europe, Nick, myself, and some singers, and a guy called Johnny. And I saw her there, and she's like, "We need to talk about the gum." And I'm like, "What's there to talk about?" And she's like, "It's going to be the death of me." And I'm like, "Really?" And she goes, "I can't deal with it. I told you this." And so we sat down, and she's like, "You know, it's going on tour. I can't be responsible for it." And I know why, because she told me she can't deal with the fragility of it, the responsibility of the story that it comes with. So I said to her, "Look, it's got to go on tour. Like, it has to go. Like, we can't put a fake one in front of people." You know, that's like the ultimate betrayal for me. Like, I want people who want to see it, I want them to see the real thing, you know. And she's like, "Look, it's going to kill me." And I said, "Where is it?" And she's like, "Well, we've constructed this container that keeps it at 24 degrees Celsius. It is in a safe." And I'm like, and she goes, "And it's still in the little glass confiture jar that it was delivered in." So that's all become part of the kind of the thing, you know. Like, it's like the kind of Tower Records bag, you know. And I said, "Look, you think about it, like, but I think we're better off not putting it in there if we don't take it." And then literally like 2 days ago, I got a text with a photo. It's like the little jam jar in this massive big box, like sunk in like foam, you know, like it's the sort of thing that you'd put like, you know, the crown jewels in if you were trying to kind of transport them. This little jar stuck in the middle of this big box with a built case around it, and she's just texted, "I'm up for it if you are." And I was like, "Fuck yes." So, you know, I find it incredibly beautiful that it's still inspiring people. The Barbican, the South Bank, called me up. They want to acquire it. They want to put it with other Nina Simone memorabilia. They wanted the towel and the bag. And, you know, it sort of spills into this other thing. I don't know if you've heard, but I've coming out of the pandemic and stuff like this, I developed a bigger awareness of community than I had before. And I eventually sort of founded a park for animals with special needs in Sumatra, and I bought some land and donated it. We crowdfunded it, and it was exactly like the gum. The right people rallied around it. The right people got underneath it. The right people with love and care. We've funded it. We're building it. The first animal, a little gibbon who has one arm and one foot missing. She went in yesterday, and today Rena, the monkey with no arms, went in, and I worked with a Dutch woman called Femke den Haas. And for me, it's exactly like the story of the gum, people getting underneath an idea who see it as something beautiful, something worth fighting for. And in the book, I talk about, with Anne actually, we have this, I spoke to Anne, was it hours, Anne? It was a long time, wasn't it? We texted a lot and things like that, and had all these exchanges. And you know, we decided we'd build a sculpture and stick it in the North Pole, the South Pole, and I wanted to stick one the size of a heart in the Statue of Liberty on Ellis Island. Now, I don't think that's going to happen because we don't have the context to put one in Ellis Island, but we've built Ellis Park, and I'm going to put a stone statue there for the monkeys to piss on and the bears to play on. I'm going to put one there. And for me, it's a continuation of this idea that you put an idea there and it takes flight, not in the way that maybe you imagined, but getting it out there can be an extraordinary thing. The great crime is not getting them out there. You know, one of the incidents in the book, which you read through in absolutely 2 seconds, is an encounter with Guillermo del Toro where I suddenly decide to do a whole score for a film based on The Sound of False Teeth, just because I look in my briefcase and see my teeth. The 90s, I lost a lot of teeth with my lifestyle pursuits, and I replaced them all with gold and whatever you do, you know. But they kept falling out, so they were rattling around, and I just thought we could make a soundtrack, you know. And I heard this idea in my head, and you know, usually I just go, this is stupid, don't say it. So I said it. Next thing, I've got Guillermo del Toro, Nick Cave, I've got the other guy who was doing it. Oh, what a great idea. We could use artificial limbs. What about eyeballs and blah, 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 like this, you know. And it was amazing watching that happen, just throwing something out there like that. And the great crime is not throwing them out there. If you have an idea, get it out there. That's what I think this book is it's about that, you know, like daring to kind of throw your ideas out there.
You throw some ideas at me as well. It's in the book there is a piece which I'm going to show you. It's this one. You know, of course. Ooh, there you go. The one and only Jonathan Richman.
Yes.
I had him on the phone yesterday.
Oh, did you?
Hello, it's Jonathan calling you back. Jonathan Richman. We'll try again.
He called me yesterday because I was trying to get in touch with him. That's him putting down the phone.
Yeah.
Because he wrote a beautiful poem about you.
Yeah.
About the dirty tree way back, and it's not in the book. So it's
yeah, you won't see that in the book. So you know, Jonathan used to come to our shows, and I think Jonathan's one of the great songwriters. And the older I get, the greater I just realise that he is. And it was like in the early 2000s, I guess, or something, and someone came into the band room, it was with Dirty Three, and they said, Jonathan Richman's outside the venue, and can he come in and say hello? And I'm like, you mean like the Roadrunner? And they're like, yeah, he comes to all your shows and he stands outside the venue because he can't deal with loud noises. And I was like, fuck, bring him in, you know. So the door opened and it's just, hi, I'm Jonathan. And you could not even dream it. It was unbelievable that he's exactly like his songs. You could not invent him. I mean, he's such a one-off. And Jonathan would like kind of send me letters, you know, and I love, he would send me handwritten letters because he doesn't have a mobile phone, he doesn't have an email, he books all his stuff himself, and he calls me and I'm like, where are you, Jonathan? I'm in a payphone.
He confirmed me yesterday he doesn't have a mail, an email,
he doesn't have anything like that, you know, so he writes letters and Jonathan would write me letters about how we should record the next record and draw a picture of The Who with a microphone. He's like, you need to put one mic here and one mic there. But Yeah, Jonathan wrote a beautiful poem and sent it. And these are things that I carried around. I mean, in the book I go through stuff that I carry around with me. Like I think a lot of us we have these little things that are important to us. It doesn't matter who they're from or what they are. Like for us, they're like little markers. They remind, they're sort of memory jolts. You know, our memory defines us. And we have these things. It might be a squash pack of cigarettes that your boyfriend who's dead smoked and it sits in the bottom of your handbag for the last 15 years. It might be something like that, you know, like that just jolt us, remind us about incidents, that remind us of life. And I think I realise I have a lot of that stuff kicking around, you know, like I just have lots of things that, I guess when I started touring a lot, I needed a little place that connected me to the earth. And that was a little briefcase that I could put things in of no significance at all. The gum went in there for a couple of years, and then I realised I was going to lose it. But I think we all have these little things that empower us in some way. And outside of our orbit, they don't have that power. The gum was something else. The gum empowered other people. That's what was really different about it. Nobody cares about your baby slippers outside of your orbit, you know, like nobody cares about the spoon that your grandmother gave you or the spoon you nicked from the diner or whatever, you know. No, it doesn't really mean anything to anybody, but what it means to you is important. And I guess that's where I realised this was a totally other thing.
There was this idea about collaborating together with Jonathan Richman in the book, and so I asked him the question, is there still an open invitation to work with Jonathan Richman? And this is what he said yesterday on the phone.
I can't, I've got my fucking glasses on.
I'll read it for you.
Yeah.
We would not need an invitation if we would have lived 1 or 2 miles from each other. It would just happen. The problem is we live 7,000 miles away from each other. But I'm a big fan of his approach, a big fan. In capitals, so.
Oh, that's just really.
So this is what happened. And this is what's happening with your book. So I called him and I said, like, I want to invite you over to AB, and Warren is living in Paris. I want to give you like a 5 days residency at his place, but I know because of environmental reasons you're not flying. Neither do you take the boat. And he was like, but this is the most beautiful invitation I had in years, and I really want to do this, not in 2022, but in 2023. And so I want to invite some guests, and you'll probably be on his guest list, one of the first guests to perform with him. So
I owe him a phone call, actually. I've been rather remiss. I haven't. If you I know you won't be. Hi, Jonathan, if you're watching, but I know he won't because he doesn't do internet or anything like that. But I do owe him a call. I actually do owe him a call.
So your book is setting things on fire in a way. That is a beautiful thing, actually. So can I jump back to the shrine? I got a question. There is a little guy down there in your shrine, Ned Kelly.
Yes.
I never heard about him, but apparently it's this guy. Can you? I don't know if the audience knows Ned Kelly, but I never heard about him before.
Yeah, Ned Kelly was a bush ranger. He's a kind of. He robbed banks and stuff like that. And he's a contentious character. Some people see him as an urban hero. Other people just think he was a murderer. But he was incredibly creative, and he put this sort of big thing on his head and kind of went out there and faced his Waterloo with a suit of armour on. I always thought it was incredibly creative.
But there is a Cave connection. There is editor Colin Cave, and Colin Cave is the father of Nick Cave, actually. And he organized the first symposium in Australia, apparently, about this guy, Ned Kelly.
There you go.
Yeah. And it's when you dive into that story, Mick Jagger, he once was Ned Kelly in that movie, 1970. And there's no such thing as a coincidence. And when Marry the Faithful, there we go back again to the at the beginning when there were a couple.
7 degrees of separation. I bet
6 degrees of separation.
6 degrees.
The 6 handshakes rule.
So what does that mean then?
I don't know.
I slept with the Queen.
Well, you know, she tried to commit suicide.
I'm David Bowie.
Fuck
it, I knew it.
She tried to commit suicide in 1970 when exactly Mick Jagger was in Australia when he was doing this role of Ned Kelly. So
Yeah, no, it's a sad story, though.
Yeah.
You wouldn't believe the amount of tablets she drank with hot chocolate. I asked her how.
Oh, yeah. So
yeah, incredibly sad story.
I actually played the track "She Walks in Beauty" on a marriage party a couple of months ago. So that's,
I bet that got the joint jumping.
Like
if you played that at my wedding.
This is the park. This is Ellis Park you were talking about,
Yeah.
and you just told me it literally opened like 2 days ago.
Yeah, literally opened like 2 days ago. We had our first resident, Trinity, who is Gibbon, who has been locked in the cage for 23 years. And she's missing an arm, which they think was probably hacked off by the people who killed her mother, because the way that they can get the babies is by killing the mother, because they won't let them go. And the same with orangutans, same with any primate. So they kill the mother and generally have to sort of, if the baby won't let go, they just sort of hack what they need to get it off. So Trinity, not this one, but Trinity's missing an arm and a foot is dead because she was caught in a snare probably before that. And then she spent 23 years in a cage, a horrible cage. She's basically like a grandmother in the primate world. And 2 days ago, we drove her 1,500 kilometres from this place she's been in. We've built her a reserve. We like a place that she can live out her life. We have 20 animals awaiting home. We have bears with no teeth. We have little Rena has no arms because she was handcuffed to a table by a trader, and when they found her, she'd eaten it all the way to the bone, so they had to amputate her arms. And when I saw her, I just thought, fuck, if I can sell some fucking T-shirts, I can help some animals. Like, something really shifted in me. And I worked on a documentary on snow leopards with this guy, Vincent Munier and Sylvain Tesson, a writer, where they track and try and photograph a snow leopard. And something shifted in me, you know, something opened my heart to something that I don't know if it was there or what, but, you know, for me, it's the work was always the thing, and I'm only as good as the next thing that I do. I think you're only as good as the next thing you do. I don't care about what I've done. I don't stack it up and think, wow, I've done this. I mean, it doesn't mean nothing when you go in to make something. It doesn't give you any... In fact, it can do you a disservice, or it can, because it makes you kind of... I don't know, like, you have to always go towards the thing that scares you the most when you make something. Otherwise, if you're feeling comfortable, you're not challenging yourself. And if you're not challenging yourself, you're not challenging your audience or the people who look at your art or whatever. Like, you have to be taking a risk, or at least it feels like that to me. And for me, it's always the next thing is important, because I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that next thing. That's the sort of always been the challenge for me, is the next thing. And the more that you do, it feels like there's less things to pick from, like you have less, and things keep moving themselves along. But, you know, I always thought after I'd made a couple of records, it was going to be the end. Like, that I've had 30 years doing this, I give thanks every day. I can't believe it. I really can't. But, you know, this thing with the park that I hadn't anticipated, that I can't imagine my life without it. I could see myself moving in there and just feeding the monkeys and kind of trying to do more in that. Like, I've never thought there was something beyond what I was doing, or that, like, okay, I don't know. I thought when we did Ghostine that I always said, when I do something great, really great, that'll be the end. And when we made Ghostine, it freaked me out, because I'd never thought I'd ever be involved in a record like that. And I thought it may have been the end of our collaboration, me and Nick. And it spooked me. And I did a couple of soundtracks and that, but to actually go in the studio and to be able to make Carnage was a relief. And you know, I don't know if I'd just been spooking myself, because if you read my book, I'm kind of superstitious about things. I get some weird things going on, and you know, I've always been prepared like that it's going to end one day. Now, 30 years later, it's still going, and I don't know why. But what is important to me is the thing that's coming up, and for some reason, this park feels incredibly important to me. I don't know, you know, maybe they'll be looking for a new fiddle player down the road. But yeah, it was something I didn't really anticipate. Like I would always wanted to do something, and I just can't imagine my life without it. Watching this, you know, gibbon be put into this new environment, who's been in this cage, and then crawl over to Femke and just make this noise that you know that she understands what's going on. Like, I think, like I couldn't even talk about it without weeping for 2 days since it happened. And today Rena went in there, and it's just going to get... I want to build a place for the elephants to go and die. I just wanted to get bigger, and I'll go there, and I want to get on a boat, and I want to go over there and put this big statue of a gum there, like I said, and get back on the gear and go out in a blaze of glory feeding monkeys and something like that, you know.
One day you made a cast out of your hands, and there was one ring with an ape. Was it one of the apes that's in the park, in Ellis Park?
No, that's pre-park. No.
It struck me that you know them by heart, eh? You know their names, huh?
Well,
this is Rena, I think.
That's Rena, yeah.
Yeah, and
she
this
has
is...
no arm. That's the little bear, Billy the bear.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's Billy the bear. It's a sea bear, a female sea bear. Yeah, and they're all rescued.
He has no teeth because people wanted their photos taken with him.
Yeah. There is a zoo in Belgium with these sort of animals as well, and I visited it like a couple of months ago, and it's nearby the sea, and it's very touching that, like, animals that are mistreated, that
you know,
finally get this...
I love the thought, that this idea of a conversation that I had with Anne about putting a sculpture, you know, in the Statue of Liberty on Ellis Park can end up being a sculpture in Ellis Park, not Ellis Island. But you know, I love the idea that these ideas are planted and that they will grow into something. I find that a beautiful thing. I also find the idea that this, like I said, the park is very much like the gum. It's like creating things. It's that people get underneath it with love and care. People, and when that happens, it's a powerful thing. It's an extraordinary thing.
When do you plan to visit to go to Sumatra? Because you haven't been there.
Well, I have to do a run of festivals, I believe, with the Bad Seeds next year, so it won't be then.
But it's pretty trustworthy to put money into it.
I think at the moment there's like Mark Riley from The Fall. He wants to come. He wants to go and live there. Like I've got a list of people. It's going to be a big boat when we go. Like I want to go. You know, one thing I've thrown out there, I want to just go there. Me and Nick, local orchestra, just play for the animals. Like I'd love to do that. You know, like Andrew can film it or something. You know, like, but you're sort of ideas. You're only limited by sort of if your imagination reins it in. It just seems like. You shouldn't limit that, you know. Like you can throw something out there, and it'll be modified, but it gets out there eventually, you know. The book starts with an incident when I was a kid with my brother, and I witnessed something. I won't tell you. I'd actually read it to you if you want to hear it. Oh, is it?
Yeah, there's a copy. There's
actually, I've got my own copy here. It's all right. Would you like to hear the start of the book? I'm railroading your thing. Has anybody read my book? No. Yes. Okay. Well, look, I'm going to read you the start of it because it sort of tells you something. This is chapter 1. Of Nina Simone's Gum by Warren Ellis. When I was maybe 5, When I was maybe 4 or 5, my older brother Stephen, who was 6 or 7, woke me up with his giggling. He was sitting on his bed in front of the window, bathed in light, peering through the crack between the roller blind and the frame. I could only see his outline backlit by the light, like the shadow scissor cutout of a facial profile. There was a glowing white light illuminating the window facing the backyard, light bursting from the space between the roller blind and the window frame. "What is it?" I asked. "Come and look." I went and sat next to him on his bed. He pulled the roller blind away from the frame. The backyard was full of clowns. The sky was full of light, like a giant flash bulb that flashed forever. On the lawn was an egg-shaped caravan. It had been converted into a food cart, the window flap held up to make an awning. Inside were clowns making hamburgers. They had a griddle fashioned from corrugated iron to cook the mud patties and would place them between 2 large gum leaves, then pass them to the clowns gathered under the awning. There were clowns everywhere, smiling and contorting, doing somersaults, hiding behind trees, taking aim, throwing the hamburgers at each other, playing in the large eucalyptus trees near the bedroom window and the crimson bottle brushes that grew over the wooden back fence, standing on the top branches of the yellow wattle trees, scaling trees like cats, hanging upside down with their legs curled around the branches, their clothes covered in mud stains and eucalyptus leaves. They made no noise. Our laughing woke our father in the other bedroom. He asked if everything was okay. "There's clowns in the backyard," I yelled. My father replied, half asleep from his bedroom. "They'll be gone in the morning. And if they aren't, your mother will scare them away when she hangs the washing out on the clothesline." That's a system you have that here, where you dry the clothes outside. Yeah. We used to play on that a lot as children, hang on. It was one of the most exciting things. Spin it around while your brother was hanging on there upside down and watch them fall off fast enough to make them fall. It was just the greatest fun. After some time, my brother and I got tired and fell asleep. We woke in the morning and looked out the window. They were gone. The caravan had vanished. The backyard never looked the same after that. Every night before bed, our father would stand in the doorway of our bedroom with his head bowed, bathed in the amber hallway light, and recite a prayer. "Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, forever and ever. God bless Mummy, Daddy, Stephen, Warren and Murray, all the little girls and boys, all the doctors, nuns, nurses and teachers. Please love us all and guard us and guide us forever and ever. Amen." I'd lie in bed wondering who the mysterious Gardus and Gaitus were. I believed the prayer was written by my father. When I started going to church, I wondered why the priest didn't recite all of the prayer my father had given to him. After prayer, I waited for dusk. Lying in bed, the twilight would come to life. These clear shapes gently moving, comforting spirits touching my face, transparent amber barley sugar cascading silently. I could see the dark. I was never afraid. One day these spirits went away. I've looked for them ever since, waiting for them to return. I started with this, talking to Oren, and you know, there's Beethoven's Ghost comes to me and stuff like this, but I remembered this incident that is totally real in my mind. It happened. Everything in the book I write about is real. I haven't invented anything for the narrative. And I was telling Oren about this, and he goes, "Man, that's your first experience with the supernatural. If you had have looked away from that, you might not have even bothered to pick up the accordion in the rubbish dump. The fact that you weren't scared of it, and the fact that the way that your father answered says something about this, that you weren't scared, of what you were seeing. And he believed that changed my life irreversibly, that experience. It's kind of a cool idea, really. But also noticed that everything incredible happens in the back garden for me, in a shed, in a caravan. There's these places where just like things happen.
Warren, you've been carrying around for 20 years a record bag of Tau records, which is not really like a beautiful bag. But I'm going to give you another record bag, which is for you.
Oh,
I bought it for you.
Oh, lovely.
Open it, if you want to. I would love to open it.
Oh, beautiful, Ellis Coltrane.
It's actually a tape that is the first record where she sang on that's just been released, and this has just been released 10 days ago. Maybe show it to the audience. It's a Love Supreme that John Coltrane only played once in its entirety in, what was it? In this. I hope you still have a record player.
I do. Yes, I do. Thank you. That's lovely. Thank you.
It's we're almost going to say goodbye to all the people who are watching worldwide, but we're finishing off because we're going to listen to some music, but we're going to finishing up with. This is typically Belgian red tape break. Are you familiar with the red tape break?
No.
It's a moment when you sign contracts. Grab the pen, dear Warren.
You're totally fucking confusing me. I'm Australian.
That's the idea.
I'm Australian.
And it says like, hereby I
don't have an artistic or a creative bone in my body.
Hereby I, Warren Ellis, accept the offer to play a show with the Dirty Three at the Ancien Belgique, date to be agreed upon.
Oh. I can't sign that.
Contract number 2. Hereby, I, Warren Ellis, accept the offer to curate a weekend at the Ancien Belgique, date to be agreed upon.
Well, what does that mean? Like, if I'm dead, do I still have to do it? what if I'm like under a coconut tree in Sumatra, buried under a coconut tree? Do I have to come back and
take care about a coconut tree? Because Keith Richards once got hit by a coconut. So
yeah, but
you'd draw the curate and
made him all
the
the
fucking
more
dirty
awesome,
tree,
didn't it? I mean, it didn't hurt him. He just, I mean, he got a lot of good mileage out of it, and everybody loved him more and more.
Think about it. There's no pressure, not at all.
Yeah, look,
there's no pressure, not at all.
I'll have to ask the monkeys.
Hey, let's listen to some music. This was an old track from 1979.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Actually, I'll just say one more little thing.
1979, dude. I was like
one little bit at the start.
Okay, Warren.
Okay.
Watch what you're saying.
Tell me when you're rolling.
1970.
We on?
1990.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen.
You can hear I'm
this
stoned
is
as a rat.
Warren Ellis here.
Smack when I was
to radio show.
This is actually the first
This is a
time, the
song
only
my
time
dad
you
used to
hear
sing me when I was a
Warren
kid.
Ellis singing.
This is called Misery Is My Middle Name, written by Screaming Johnny Ellis, and this is the reason I am what I am
I was
today.
there.
And that's your father, John Ellis.
That is my father.
Well, you're looking at a man that's so mighty sad. His misery and tears is all I've ever had. I found it's true, but someone once said, a man that loves a woman is a better off dead. Misery is my middle name, and I've earned it for knowing such pain.
Well, I used to love a woman down in the town, in my little buggy.
Give a round of applause to singing Warren Ellis, people.
Right through the summer, she loved me good. She left me in the winter with a leaking hood. Misery is my middle name, and I've earned it for knowing such pain.
Where's your little bugger?
Yes, actually, just to get, if anybody does care, that was 1996, not 1970. 1970. you know, of Australia, in a country town called Ballarat. My dad would buy a record if it was 20 cents because he'd figured someone must have thought it was good enough to put out. So he had the most insane record collection, from like Aphrodite's Child, you know, because nobody was into Demis Roussos, but he had it, you know. I didn't like it, but he gave it a listen. And you know, to like Nana Mouskouri and country. He loved country and western. Loved country and western. Wasn't sure about rock and roll, but you know, he didn't like jazz. But there would be a couple of jazz records. So my father just kept playing music around me all the time. You know, and I remember, you know, he had a guitar and he'd sit and play it, and I used to sit against. I remember sitting against it as a kid. I remember feeling the vibrations of it. And my mother liked the radio on all the time, and that was when there was peace in the house, when the classical station was on. No one spoke. It just would play all the time, particularly over summer. I remember. So I had just music going around me all the time. You know, I think music helped me find a place in the world. I couldn't... Words I always struggled with. I like reading, but... You know, music gave me a connection to a world that wasn't... it didn't seem real. And music gave me something to hang the world on. You know, I remember when people started playing me music from the psychedelic era, you know, when we were getting into pot in the mid-'80s. I just thought it was kind of lame because I'd already listened to Bitches Brew by Miles Davis. I'd already listened to Lawrence of Newark. You know, I'd listened to John Coltrane. I'd listen to John Coltrane and think God was talking to me and just hallucinate without any need to take any drugs or anything at all. So when I heard this psychedelic music, you know, like I just kind of thought it was lightweight because I'd already been like kind of, you know, just lost in this other sort of music that seems so kind of far out there. And I think I just thought everybody was like that. And it wasn't just about, you know, for some people it's Iggy Pop's Silver Pants, you know, for some people it's like, you know, John Coltrane saxophone. For some people it's, I don't know, we have these, for some people it's Nina Simone. We have these things that touch us deeply with music. Music speaks in a way that we know where we stand with it. We like it or we don't. It's an emotional thing. There's something powerful, there's something raw about it, the way that it speaks to us. And with words, I always struggled a lot, even to complete books as a kid. Like I found it difficult to read them, but I could listen to a record over and over and over and over and over, and find a new way into it each time, or find comfort in there listening to it. And then I started reading more when I left. I studied English at school. I don't know how I passed. I don't think I read anything. I think I just copied essays and, you know, I can't remember. I did music and English at university and then became a school teacher. But music was the one thing that was constant throughout my life. And I was a listener, and I still am. Like, I never thought I would be a performer, ever. Like, I just did not make any connection between me and what I saw on the stage. I never envisaged a career, if you want to call it that, in music at all. It's still a mystery to me that I've managed to do this thing that I love for the last 30 years. But I think, like, it was the way music affected me as a listener. What I was playing didn't really make any sense to me, classical music, and it didn't speak to me, and I couldn't play it to people and they would get it, you know, like, but listening, you know, it was another thing. And somehow I think later on in my life, my listening experiences informed what I had developed on the violin. It was kind of in the early 90s when I started Dirty Three. Yeah, it was around then, and my brother gave me a guitar pickup, stuck it on with a rubber band. I went down to a gig because somebody needed a violin player. I put everything on 10. He gave me a distortion pedal and he said, try this out. I put it on 10 and clicked it on, and I was like, wow. And I've been playing ever since.
I was familiar with most of the names in the book, but there was one name I never heard about, a Greek singer called Arleta, but that's not the way how you
name's
pronounce
Arleta.
it.
You know,
Let's listen to it first. It's
no, let me play the tune. Well, you can play.
Yeah. Play the tune. I'll play the original.
Play her a bit.
Νύχτα βροχερή, άδειο το χέρι, ψάχνει να σε βρει, μα δεν το ξέρει, που θα σε βρει. Μια φορά θυμάμαι μ' αγαπούσες, τώρα βροχή. Μια φορά θυμάμαι μου μιλούσες, τώρα σιωπή. Πέτρος η φωνή και πώς να κλάψει, που φύγες εσύ έχουν ανάψει χίλιοι καημοί. Μια φορά θυμάμαι μ' αγαπούσες, τώρα βροχή. Μια φορά θυμάμαι μου μιλούσες, τώρα σιωπή.
Thank you so much. This is so beautiful.
There's a beautiful ending of that we just chopped off.
That's called
there is
a
a
rough
really
landing.
beautiful ending. She made a lot of records, but the first two records are just absolutely extraordinary. And I'd been, I was 20 and I fell in love with somebody, and it didn't work out. And I was left with this tape and this song. And I just played this over and over and over. It's in my book. I won't tell you what happens. But I'd been told, this isn't in the book, and I wish I'd I'm going to put it in the paperback when it comes out. I had been told that Arleta was dead, that she committed suicide, that she made 2 records, and she'd killed herself. And like, my God, I just couldn't believe it. Like, it was just, like Songs of Love and Hate, when you hear that album, like I just couldn't believe what came with that knowledge, that she killed herself and made these 2 extraordinary, beautiful records and fragile. Anyway, years I thought that, and then in 1995, I'd lost the tape, and I remembered the song because I used to play it all the time in the street when I was busking in the 80s. And I showed it to Mick and Jim, and it was one of the first songs we ever played in Dirty Three. Do anyone know Dirty Three, the band? So Dirty Three's an instrumental band that me, Mick and Jim. We got together like 5 songs in an afternoon and went and played that night. And one of them was this song by Arleta. Anyway, we get to Greece. I met Nick at dinner. I went in to a recording session. He said, "Look, if you ever get to Europe, here's my number." And I got to Europe and called him, and he'd said, "If you get over there, you can open for us in Greece and Israel." So we did. We went to Athens with about 10 cents in our pocket, and we started playing this song, and the whole place just erupted. People were singing and dancing and stuff like this. I'd never seen anything like it. And afterwards, this promoter, I think, or somebody came up and said, you know, how do you know Mia Fratia Mimi? And I was like, you know, I had this cassette and like, wow, you know, what a beautiful song. And she's dead, you know, it's so tragic like this. And he goes, what are you talking about? And I'm like, you know, she killed herself. And after the records came out, and he's like, she lives 2 blocks from here in an apartment. And I'm like, no. He goes, would you like to meet her? And so, you know, it was really interesting because, kind of extraordinary, because the whole thing I'd bought to this song was all of my own. I mean, the song is beautiful. The song is absolutely beautiful, you know, but I had this other thing to it, you know, that suited my purposes as well. But I'm glad she wasn't dead, and I did go and meet her, and the song, that song, you know, and she became somebody really important in my life, in a really deep way, you know, that song became really important to me.
And it was translated in a beautiful way, yeah? There was a time when you once used to love me. It's, emotional song title.
Well, yeah, it was kind of funny, you know, it's, you know, like serendipity, but, you know, it was a song that I listened to because, you know, I had this heart that was, you know, it's like when you're 20 and your heart gets broken, you just kind of, you're like the middle of the darkest place on the earth, you know, and you just, you know, you don't know what to do with it. You don't understand, or I didn't understand what was going on. So I got lost in this song, and then years later, and I found out that was what the translation was, because I didn't know what the song was called at all. I just had this cassette with a kind of this picture of her on the front. I didn't even know what her name was. I just knew that I loved this cassette.
How does your version sound? Can we hear it?
Like, would I play it?
I happen to have a violin with me.
You think this is rehearsed, but it's not. First thing I ever wrote was a song called Indian Love Song. I talked about this last night actually. Hey, I think the first thing I ever wrote was a riff for this piece called Indian Love Song that in the hands of Jim and Mick became this kind of symphonic kind of fucking extraordinary thing, you know. But it was just this really simple little riff that goes. It was one of the first things that I played at the rehearsal, and what it came in the hands of Mick and Jim was something else, but that idea was when I was sitting in an orchestral rehearsal in the 80s at college, just so fucking bored. And I heard a double bass player play something that I thought sounded really cool, so I imitated it. And then afterwards I went over and I said, Ken, that was a really cool bit you were playing, was that this? And he goes, no, I was trying to play Kind of Blue by Miles Davis. And I was like, okay, now I guess I probably owe him some royalties or something like that, but what I love about that is that is quite often how ideas happen. You see something, you hear something, it triggers something, but it's very rare that happens. Most of it is just about sitting down and doing the work. Things don't fall from the sky, or they don't for me. And I could count them on this hand, the amount of things that have felt there was some sort of something else at play.
one of them is Ghost Deed, the record, and a couple of tracks on Skull and Tree. And I think that's probably it for my whole creative life. The rest has been about just sitting there, working through the failures and the kind of ideas that eventually come to something. It is really just about that. Turning up and working. Anyway, this my version is slightly less prettier than that one, so yeah.
Thank you. Fuck.
Barn, did you ever remember playing on the stage?
You can imagine the first time I met Nick and went in the studio, he didn't know. Lockdown. He didn't really know anything about the band, and he came and saw the show. And afterwards he goes, "Oh, I really like that song, you know, something about remembering a time." And like, it was the only one we hadn't written. I never forget that. Yeah.
Thank you so much. You want to end up with metal machine music from Lou Reed or Alice Coltrane?
No, I don't think we need to listen to music.
Okay.
If anybody wants to ask some questions or anybody wants to ask me, yeah.
Parajanov, what's your connection to
Parajanov? So, Parajanov, it's one of the films that I can just watch on repeat. I love that film, The Color of Pomegranates. When I moved to Paris, I discovered it by accident on Arte or something like that, and I couldn't speak any French, and I just thought it was the most poetic, beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my life. And it took me quite a while to work out what it was. And I had to say, look, I saw this film and it had like sheep with their throats being slit and pages of a book. And someone said, that's the Color of Pomegranates. And then a friend of mine in London did an exhibition of clothes and props from his films. And then I just saw every film. I bought every book on him. I went and saw the films in the cinema. But that film, The Color of Pomegranates, if I've watched it 100 times, I've watched it 200 times. No, I'm going to do that though. My friend Jerry and me, we're going to go one day. Like, it's something I want to do, but I haven't. Have you been? And it's amazing, yeah. I bet I can tell by the look on your face how amazing it is. Yeah. No, there's some films that I can watch over and over and over and over again. Film, at a certain age for me, films just took over everything. I used to, instead of going to university, they were programming movies on TV from midnight until 6 in the morning. So I'd just sit and watch them and miss school. That's where I saw John Cassavetes. That's where I saw things like Oni Baba. Whoever was programming this stuff, they were putting incredible films on. It was like, nobody's up, let's just give somebody free range. And you know, that's where my sort of education in film started. Because up until then I was just seeing, you know, blockbuster things and stuff like that. And it was very hard to see art house films. There was a cinema in Melbourne that showed stuff like Koyaanisqatsi and things like that. But early on, in the early 80s, you know, that was where I kind of started really seeing different films. But yeah, I love that film so much. I can start it in the middle. I can watch the end of it. I can just start it anywhere. If I could play it backwards, I would. Have you seen that film? Check it out. It's extraordinary, and also it shows the poetry that can be done with the simplest of things. Pure artistry.
Does anybody else has a question?
Warren?
Yeah.
Did I understand that well, that the Copenhagen exhibition is moving to another town?
I think that's on a need-to-know basis, and I might have let something out of the bag that I should.
It's the right time to tell us that.
Well, you know, it's not for me to say, but if it was to go somewhere else, you didn't hear it from me, all right? The government's going. I don't think it's going on its own, but
It's Brussels, isn't it?
I can tell you it's not, sadly. Well.
It will be one day, but it won't be Brussels first. That's what I've heard.
I'm not sure. I don't know if it will. I have no idea, actually. But I don't think that's the first protocol.
I think you need to pay continental flight to watch the next exhibition, I think. So.
I think that's for AB to do that.
For 6 months, no concerts, only like the Hall of Gratitude. Is there anybody else who wants to ask a question before? Because I think you want to do some book signings as well. Like,
yeah, but I'd rather answer questions. You can bring the books here and we can sign them, whatever. Yeah.
I was wondering if you just tell us a bit more about the experience of listening to Coltrane. You just mentioned...
Yeah, I was like, I just moved down from Ballarat, you know, and I mean, I discovered Charlie Parker because I was playing Charlie Parker solos on the flute. I played the flute as well. You've probably heard it on Breathless. Like, okay, so that flute, controversially, Mute asked us to actually take it off the front of it because the BBC considered it unplayable, unlistenable, like, and they wanted to get the guy from Jethro Tull to replay it. Seriously, they chopped it off, but it is on the record and stuff like that. But my flute skills were actually better than my violin at a certain point in my life. I could never play the violin in tune ever, and I really only have I have an octave and a half, which is about, what's that, 12 notes that I can play with some confidence. The rest of it, it's like oxygen masks, you know, it's just like, look out. But I was always actually better on the flute, so I was playing Charlie Parker solos and things like that. I moved down to Melbourne, and I met a saxophone player, and it was the first band I ever played in. It was a comedy band. It was called the Bashed Yabbies. A yabby is like a freshwater crustacean. This isn't the story that you're after, but I'm giving you the long lead to it, you know. I used to play banjo in that band, dressed in my McDonald's outfit with a rubber chicken sticking out of my trousers. We were kind of not a very funny comedy act. The drummer thought he was Phil Collins, and he wasn't going bald, so he used to shave a receding hairline, you know, and he had like an outrageous drum kit. And Steve, Steve, the saxophone player, he was like 28 going on. He was like a 5-year-old. He just had this kind of incredibly beautiful, naive spirit, you know. He was an extraordinary guy, Steve Colebrook. And one day he went round to his house and he just said, check this out. And he put on Vigil by John Coltrane, and I didn't know what it was. And I just lost my shit. Like, I started hallucinating. I sat there. It was like I saw the whole history of the world passed in front of me in like 8 minutes or something, you know. And I just, at the end, I said, who was that? And he said, it's John Coltrane. And then, I could never afford records. I found that record in the wrong cover for $1. Like, it turned up in a violin record that I didn't really want, but like the cover looked really cool. And inside was that record, Coulisse Mama. And after I heard that, it just sent me on a sort of, a quest that goes until this day, you know. It's interesting, I think, with music that touches you deeply. You know, it could be John Lee Hooker, it could be Howlin' Wolf, it could be Lou Reed. Lou Reed, I can go back to any day of the week. I still go to him. I start the book with a quote by Lou Reed because it's from Junior Dad. The line, would you come to me if I was half drowning, an arm above the last wave? For me, the book was like a petition, like a prayer of sorts. You know, like I was begging for help. And that song, Junior Dad, off Lulu, I just think is one of Lou Reed's greatest songs. I love that album so much. It was so maligned when it came out, but it's an extra. If I get to 70 and I make anything halfway as good as that, I'd be happy. You know, like it's extraordinary. And Lou Reed is someone that I just can come back to any time. But you probably have these people that you listen to, or authors that you like, or artists that have hit you at a certain point in your life, whenever it is, and you always have the same connection with them. You always feel the same thing, and something inside you says, I was right about that. I was right about that. I still get the same feeling, you know, from that. And for me, it's a bit like, it's kind of like time travel. You just keep going back and revisiting that kind of person that you still are, not when you look in the mirror, but that person that you are when you're walking down the street, not looking at anything that reflects you, but that person that you feel. That's the person that was right about those things that blew your mind, those books that you read that changed the world, those films that you saw that changed your life, those things when you felt like your heart changed. That person, I think, is always in there with us. And it's a bit in I think I realised this in my book when I looked at that sort of little kid seeing those clowns filled with wonder and awe. That's the kid that you see playing on stage every night, still with that same sense of wonder and awe about the situation that I'm in, about the creative process, about being there. I think that, and for me, that person is only there as a result of the other people who have come and helped me. You know, I feel deeply grateful for anyone and everything who has informed me along the way. Because without them, I'd be a very different person. Maybe I'd be better, I don't know. I don't always do the right thing. I don't think anybody does. We all fuck up. But I think if you can, I don't know, I just kind of feel like if we can leave the world a better place, well, maybe that's something we can aim for rather than not. Anything else? Yeah.
Yeah, hello.
Hey, what's your name?
Ewout.
Ewout? I'm Warren.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I really like the way you talk about these artists you love, like Nina Simone and Lou Reed and John Coltrane. But I was wondering, when you first joined the Bad Seeds, what did you think of Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds? Did you think
I thought they were the greatest band on the planet. Like, I really did, you know. Like, I mean, I went to see the birthday party, but I was so fucked up, I fell asleep in the entrance of the venue, and I never saw the show. And then I saw them when they came back doing the Man or Myth tour, and when From Her to Eternity came out, I just couldn't believe it. I thought like it, you know, I'd kind of gone off rock and I guess I'm not really rock and roll, that's clear. But, you know, when I heard From Her to Eternity, I just thought, oh man, somebody is trying to do something with the genre. You know, I didn't get it, I didn't understand it, you know, and I was just, you know, like, everything just would get so repetitive. You know, it's why I love Yeezus, that album by Kanye West. It's why I love Lana Del Rey's album, the last one, Chemtrails, over the country club. You know, I love that Divide and Dissolve, Gaslit record. You know, when I heard From Her to Eternity, it was just like something. It was familiar, like Yeezus, but it was totally like, what the fuck, you know, is going on? So I just thought they were like the greatest band on the planet. And I loved From Her to Eternity. I loved Your Funeral, My Trial. and because they were from Australia as well, you know, when they left, when they came back, it was like they all grew 30 centimetres. When they came back, you know, they left like these little kids. When they came back as a birthday, you know, they were kind of, it was just sort of, they were monolithical, you know. It was amazing, you know. And so, yeah, then when I actually met Nick, you know, I mean, well, you can imagine, do you play an instrument? Yeah. Yeah, okay, so you imagine, I don't actually play one, you know, that's where you've got the up on me, but, you know, I was like kind of, mortified, you know. It was incredibly overwhelming because suddenly, you know, there I was in the room with these people who, and I remember I kind of had a massive whack of amphetamines, and I kind of got in there, and I just thought, well, if I've been asked in here, there's not much point being scared, you know, or being overwhelmed by it. I just should do what I do. And then I remember Nick was playing a song that wasn't working. It was called The Willow Garden. And they'd written it. I walked in the day, you know, and weirdly, my girlfriend was a speed freak as well. She'd made my outfit, which was a pair of shorts made out of flour bags. And I think I had a purple cord jacket on. And Nick looked at me and goes, "You're very sartorial." Now, I had no idea what that word meant. I had to go home and look it up in the dictionary. I didn't realise he was being ironic. I took it as like, I must have looked really awesome. But, and they were trying to work out this song, and I just said something like, why don't you try, like, I said what was on my mind, basically. I said, why don't you, do you know that song by the Chieftains and Van Morrison, that song Carrickfergus? It has that drop to the chord, you know, that song, I Wish I Had You in Carrickfergus. And I knew that song because I loved that record, and, you know, I'd played it as well in the streets when I was busking. And he goes, what do you mean? And I go, well, you know how that, I don't know, I didn't even know what it did, but it has this shift. So Nick started playing it, and he looked at me and just goes, do you want to come in tomorrow? And that was it. And Conway, meanwhile, told me later he was in the control room. Conway Savage, who's sadly no longer with us. Conway goes, when I said something, he just expected Nick to go, get out. You know, like nobody said anything. And they were all waiting for it, and it never happened. You know, whether that's a good or bad thing, I don't know. You know, it depends who you ask. But yeah, I was incredibly overwhelmed. It also, once I started playing with them, it changed, obviously, clearly changed my relationship. And I could never go in there looking at Nick in the same way ever again, because it didn't do the work any good. And as our collaboration became more and more involved, doing soundtrack work and things like that, it doesn't do anyone a service to tell them stuff that they just want to hear, whoever they are. You know, you want the right feedback. It's disrespectful to not give your thoughts. And you know, I kind of, I realised, you know, once we started working together more and more, I had to be like that, you know. So I kind of, you know, had to sort of like remove that thing. And it's funny, I can listen to From Her to Eternity and listen to those records and still feel that same thing that I felt. I can't listen to anything after that I'm involved in. Well, I don't need to listen to anything that I'm involved in anyway, you know. Yeah, it was, you know, and I mean, yeah, it's a sort of strange change in something that happens in that relationship, you know. When you're totally in awe of something, and then the opportunity arises for you to actually work in there. Yeah.
Maybe one last question, if there's somebody who
Yes.
wants to ask a last question.
Did you actually get any reaction from Nina Simone taking her job?
She died already, yeah?
When I took it,
Yeah.
did she say anything?
Yeah, did she
No,
know?
she'd left. She was gone. Like, you know, I think she was gone straight away. She wouldn't have been aware of it, but her daughter is aware of it, and her daughter reached out to me and had seen 20,000 Days on Earth, and loved it, and wanted me to interview her about her mother. And that didn't happen because of the COVID thing. But her estate is an absolute nightmare. Like, I tried to get, I had to get rights for all the photos, you know, and I'd taken a photo of her smoking a cigarette. There's a picture of her and this mate of mine having a smoke. And I just wanted these two people to finally have a cigarette together that I would have imagined would have been just fantastic, you know, this dear friend Mick and Nina Simone having a cigarette. And I took a photo of an interview of her from the time with my iPhone, asked the BBC, and they asked for an outrageous fee to use it. And in the end, I just thought, oh, look, okay, well, I'll just pay it because I want it. Then they go, well, you have to see the estate. Now, I went through so many circles, and it all ended up, it's chaos. And then I got in touch with her daughter, and it's absolute chaos. Now, I don't even know if they'll ever come after me about it, like asking for it back or what. I don't really know what the legal ramifications of it are, to be honest. I mean, it'd be rather churlish if they did. But, yeah, her estate is just in absolute chaos. I don't know what she'd make of it. She'd, you know, probably just like, stupid white guy, silly white boy, what are you doing, you know, like, crazy dude. I don't know, I mean, but, you know, yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, you seem like this humble and calm and laid-back guy, but on stage, and when you're playing the violin, you turn into this beast of a man.
He just called you a beast.
Yeah. I wonder if that is that the power the music has on you, or the effect?
The stage is an incredibly sacred place. The day it's not, I don't deserve to be on it. And it wasn't always like that. When I was always terrified when I would perform as a kid. I couldn't stand it. I did university. I hated performing. But when I got on a stage in a band, when I started playing, something shifted. And the stage, you know, I've seen concerts like this concert of Nina Simone. I've seen, you know, I've walked in and seen Bob Dylan, and you know, the guy's 70 or he's 80 now, you know. Something else happens. I saw Jerry Lee do a show in Paris, you know, that was one of the greatest rock and roll shows I've ever seen. He couldn't even get his foot up on the piano, but he tried, and they lifted him, and he was... It was wild. You look at Howlin' Wolf, you know, before, like, this transformation, and I think this is the thing about the book, about the concert that was incredible, that this transformation that happened with her is something that happens in music on the stage. It's a sacred place, what goes on. You know, watching, I talk a bit about this in the book, and I don't really talk about this much, but seeing Nick come back from when his son died, watching the way he drew on himself, you know, to get back out there and play. Like, that Skeleton Tree tour was just like such a transformative thing to watch that, like every night watching him find himself again. And, you know, the stages, it's fucking powerful stuff, what goes up there. You know, I'm playing with a bunch of 60-year-olds now. And, you know, like, you used to be worried about people ODing and, you know, finding their feet sticking out from under the toilet door. These days it's, you know, heart attacks and, you know, like, I can't even play a tune now without getting out of breath. They're different things these days, you know, different things that you're up against. But something happens up there, you know. Like, I look around, I'm like, fuck. Like, Nick, I've seen him from the front, from the back, from everywhere, you know. And there's this energy there, you know. I look at the band, look at Marty, I look at Jim and Mick when we play, and I catch glimpses of them, and I see we're getting older and we're getting more stooped. But fuck, when you get on stage, something happens, you know. I never watched myself on stage until I was forced to watch it with a film a while back, because I didn't want to know what happened. I didn't want to be self-conscious of what was going on. I'd see photos. And I think, I don't know, I've never tried to understand, like I've never tried to understand why it works with me and Nick, the collaborative process, because I'm superstitious that it will stop. And trying to understand what happens when I go on stage doesn't serve me any purpose, you know. I just know that for that moment in my life, I know when I played that song for you then, I can feel Jim and Mick playing with me. Like, I can hear them, you know. It's powerful stuff. It's beautiful stuff. And I don't know, and I don't feel the need to try and understand or want to understand it, you know. I don't know why I'm so different on stage. I used to be so nervous on stage when I started, and it was a big reason for me, like drinking so much, and I found drugs and things like that helped me kind of get over that. And I was always, you know, worried when I eventually decided to stop all that shit. I didn't want to be defined by it, and when I stopped, I thought, oh, maybe I won't be able to play again, you know, like, maybe that's what was doing it. And then Nick called me and he goes, oh, we've got a gig in a Guinness factory. And I'm like, really? Like, I'd been like 1 month off booze, you know, like, and I turned up there and it was just like a trial by fire, you know, the smell, it was just reeked of Guinness and stuff like that. But very quickly,
I found that life got better, and I found that actually what I was tapping into wasn't that stuff that was doing it. It was within me, and you know, I'm really grateful that I kind of had a chance to realise that. That all that stuff was coming from me, you know, like it wasn't fueled by the chaos and the shit that I was pumping into my body. And actually, you know, and it's gotten better, you know, like I feel like, I mean, I wouldn't be still doing things if I didn't feel like it was evolving or getting better, you know, and I feel I'm just getting started in a way, you know.
I think we're sort of rounding off. Aren't Belgian people...
Why don't we just bring the books here?
Yeah, bring the books here.
Sign them.
You can sign them here. Aren't Belgian people lovely? They just call you a beast. That's going to be your nickname in the future. So maybe give Warren a big round of applause, please.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Warren, for taking 2 hours of time to chat with the audience. So.